Hello, and welcome to another episode of X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm your host, Miles, and I'm back with someone who makes our episodes grow brighter and smarter, one conversation at a time. Now, I know the word audit doesn't usually make people lean in. It often conjures thoughts of spreadsheets, size, and maybe stiff suits. But today, I hope you guys stick with us because we're about to reframe the way you think about internal audits and self assessments. And with the right guidance, these tools ignite transformation. And who better to guide us through that shift than someone who's practically engineered the art of responsible growth? With over 40 years of experience empowering businesses across the globe, our guest has been leading ACI Global and e-Quip, being at the forefront of ISO certified education, training, and professional development. He's built his legacy around one powerful philosophy: if people grow, business grows, and it lasts. His mission? To make quality contagious, not just on paper or on his background, but in culture, leadership, and performance. His team uses Accelerated Continuous Improvement, or ACI, as a tool to turn internal auditing and self assessment into strategic advantage. It's not just about looking back at what went wrong, it's about planning for what could go incredibly right. So let's start this rolling with the ever insightful and always forward thinking Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and eQuip, Ian Erskine. Hi, Ian.
And
Back.
uh, Hi, Miles, and thanks again for the wonderful intro. And welcome to all our guests. And yes, it's your intro touched on a couple of subjects there, which are quite interesting because generally the perception of an auditor, and it's quite wrong, but the perception of an auditor is, oh my God, here comes our inspector.
Mm,
Oh my God, he's going to find this wrong. My God, we've got to have all the documents ready for him and all lined up and things like that. And the true nature of audit, or as we call it, conformity assessment, is so different because, in actual fact, what conformity assessment is all about adding value to the organisation. Now,
mhm,
that's one of our core philosophies at ACI Global when we train auditors and lead auditors, and we'll have a session next week on leading an audit team. But our core philosophy in reference to auditing is the auditor must be able to add value to that organisation
mhm.
through that audit process. Now, if that is not added, the auditor truly needs to question why they should be privileged to be invited back for the next audit. So
Mm.
that's the perception, I guess, that we want to change, is the perception of an inspector, oh, here comes a terrible man that's going to look for fault and find fault and things like that, to one of excitement,
Mhm.
continuous improvement, adding value, and very much, as you said in your intro, very much to people focused, because without people, the organisation does not exist.
Yeah, right. Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
And thank you for that kickstart because today's topic, audit through conformity and fortitude, feels like one of those areas. Every time you're on, we end up learning something we thought we already knew, but then realize we actually didn't. So
Yeah.
we better start at the top. You've been championing internal auditing and self-assessment for decades. Why are these practices so critical in today's business environment, especially for organizations aiming for sustainability and continuous improvement?
Well, today more than ever, it is so important to probably undertaking more audits and more self-assessments than you would normally do. And this is specifically targeted to the environment that we're in today. And I guess in some respects, businesses are being built at both ways. They can see the turmoil that's going around the world, and that's affecting supply chains, it's affecting oil, and that has an effect on our energy supply. But also it's affecting people when we talk about AI and ADM, automated decision making. People are feeling threatened they're feeling less secure. And this is where conformity assessment, and we align that with the ISO 19 and 11 2018 standard. Again, they're not, what's the word for it, a specific way you have to audit, but they're a generic set of guidelines and philosophies in reference to the way you actually do it. And now there needs to be an even more emphasis on carrying out audit of processes which particularly involve people. Now, one of those key processes is competency and verification of competence, capability, and skill.
Mhm.
So at all times, we should actually be increasing that focus, right? And ensuring that people are encouraged to increase their level of skills, right? Because if, for goodness sake, it does happen that the organisation says, right, your job is now surplus, right, because
Mhm.
we're going to replace it with robots and AI, that person needs to be able to be confidently able to step out and step into a new career. And that's again where it's very pertinent for ACI Global, because we give them the mobile toolkit where they can take their skills assessments and verification as a log to a prospective client, prospective business that they're going to work for, and simply say, this is how much value add I can bring to an organisation. And again, going back to this, we've already spoken about this when we talk about people's careers, their resumes and things like that. They have to be able to be confident to be able to sit down with the person that is interviewing them, which quite often is the senior managers or the managing director, and they have to be quite confident to be able to put forward why they should be employed with that organisation. So they've got to be able to have something that they can bring to the organisation. And
Mhm.
that's what we were talking about. That's what, and we've done it in one of our previous podcasts. We've spoken about our onboarding and induction process. So
Mhm.
they can actually go to the organisation with the help of ACI Global, fully understanding what the organisation is all about, fully understanding their induction process, their onboarding process. But over and above that, they can also, with the help of ACI Global, take their skills log and say to the managing director, this is where I'm highly skilled in. I'm still upgrading my skills in reference to this with ACI Global, and this is what I can actually bring to the organisation.
Right. It's just amazing how something as structured as an audit can become a creative force for change when done with purpose. Like what you would always say, it's more than just identifying gaps, it's discovering opportunities. And in this fast pacing or fast moving world, I guess the businesses that slow down just enough to self correct are the ones that really stay relevant. And
Yeah.
a lot of organizations still view audits as checklist exercises, Ian, but ACI Global approaches them quite differently. Could you walk us through how your auditing approach, especially aligned with conformity assessment and ISO 19011-2018, is designed to drive real performance improvement, not just compliance?
Yes, and I guess this is where we introduce the terminology of Fortitude. And so leading into Fortitude, as I said previously, the audit has to be a process where it adds value to the organisation. Now, auditors that literally religiously go by the standard and working with conformity bodies, certification bodies, you get the feeling that they have to go into that organisation and find something or find a non-conformance for so that they can write up that non-conformance. Whereas I do it the other way. I and all our trained candidates are trained to actually look at how they can add value. Now, I hear people immediately jumping in and saying, "Oh, then you've created a conflict of interest and so forth." No, you don't lead the organisation. Basically, you sow the idea in as an opportunity for improvement. And if
Mhm.
you have this mindset of going into the organisation purely to add value, not to find fault, purely to add value through conformity assessment and abiding by fortitude, this is where you will get to that. Right now, when people think about fortitude, or what does that actually mean? To give you an idea, what it actually means is you have to be prepared to call the situation as you find it, as it is. You mustn't sugarcoat, you mustn't walk away from a process that is failing. And
Mhm.
if you see something that, my goodness, if I bring that to the attention of the organisation, that's going to cost them a lot and lot of money, that must not come into your thinking. That's what we talk about fortitude. That's where you have to step up and explain why that process is failing, right? And
Mhm.
you do that through a system of gained experience and knowledge within the industries you're working with, right? Because again, one of the points we make to our auditors is it's just not a 3 year process. Okay. At the end of that 3 years, yes, it's not mandatory, but what we want to see them, we want to see them come back, be recertified under the ISO standard, and basically then go for another 3 years continually improving themselves.
Mhm.
Because having done that, they can then take that on board to an organisation and actually, even just talking with people on the shop room floors and within a call centre and things like that.
Yeah.
There's a way where you can actually watch, listen, and learn yourself, right? But what I try to do, I try to involve the people within the organisation in the audit and conformity process. So when they're listening to me speaking and giving examples of different organisations and different processes, what I want to see then is, wow, perhaps we could take that on board. Gee,
Uh-huh.
that looks a pretty good idea. And I'll give you a real live example of that. I did a transfer station a couple of weeks ago, and this transfer station, when I first went and audited them, was on the outs, well and truly out on the outskirts of the little township. The
Mhm.
little township now has become a major town, right? When
Mhm.
they first started out, there was a cemetery on one side and vacant primary agricultural land on all around the other side, right?
Mhm.
Now there's warehouses on one other side, and then there's the township has encompasses all around, right?
Mhm.
And I had actually given this organisation away as part of my cancer journey, where I had to actually get myself better. And yes, 3-0 still to me. But when we went for a bit of a drive, I asked the senior manager, look, can we go for a drive around and have a look to see where the urban encroachment has come in around the transfer station, right? And we just spoke about some of the complaints they had from the Environmental Protection Agency, right? And I just simply posed a question. I said, I really wonder how many people really understand, or in some respects, know you exist where you are, and
Mhm.
how you actually handle the waste that comes in and is separated into recycling and others go to landfill and so forth.
Yeah.
And collectively, we came up with an idea. Well, how about we hold like a family barbecue every 2 or 3 months, right?
Mhm.
Invite all the neighbourhood people, come in, right? And um, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to send flyers out, and I believe it's already started where the people are starting to come to these little barbecues, right? And
Mhm.
I said to the managing director, I said, you may well be surprised. Someone will come, they'll be sitting down with you, and they'll come up with an idea which maybe you haven't even thought of.
Uh-huh. Right.
And again, this is where we we pride ourselves on empowering our trainees to actually be able to go out and audit within the organisation almost as if they're part of that organisation. And that is the true
Mhm.
meaning of fortitude and conformance assessment.
Yes, well, thank you. That example you just shared provided us a clearer view that shows a shift in mindset. And when you combine it with true conformity assessment thinking, audits become about alignment and being one and not just, typical inspection. So from audit as fear to audit as fuel, it's preparing for what's next and it elevates the value of the organization. As you said, it brings additional value. And that leads me to go back to the internal side, self assessment, Ian. You always place a lot of importance on empowering individuals and teams to reflect on themselves. But this takes more than process, it takes, as you said, fortitude. So, how do you help organizations cultivate that strength to be honest, act on feedback, and grow through self assessment?
Well, I think it goes back to the very beginning again. As we said, we always talk about people, the importance of people. And within people, they have to have that confidence that they can excel. They have to have that confidence that they want to be true leaders. They have to have that confidence to excel at all times. Now,
Mm-hmm.
to do that, that is an ongoing process of understanding a number of key philosophies. Now, one of the very first is they must understand that there is no grey areas between right and wrong. That's the first one. The
Mm-hmm.
second one is that you have to be ethical and true to your own personal values and beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then basically the third one is you actually want to be part of that organization's success. So for that to happen, you have to be prepared to change. Okay. And you've often heard me talk about it in reference to change. I always take people back. Remember the little book, Who Moved My Cheese? Two
Yeah.
mice, two little people, and be prepared to change. Because if you're not prepared to change, even little bits of change
Mm-hmm.
within one's inner sanctum, right, is like, oh, I don't know whether I want to leave the comfort of my arms and things like that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
bit like, I often put it, it's a bit like a young child that's growing from the ages of 2 to 3 to 4. It's a bit like our little granddaughter that turned 4 on Sunday. She's stepping up all the time. She's learning from her mistakes. Little things worry her and she'll burst out crying. Mum and dad, or even grandma and Poppy, will put their arms around her and console her. It's all right, Ella. Everything is fine, right? That is part of learning about change. So
Right.
we ourselves, and I hear it quite often, people say, oh my God, you're at such an age, you're so old, you need to retire. No, I enjoy what I do, and what I want people to be in that same framework is to enjoy themselves at work, right? Challenge themselves to take that next step up the ladder, right? Or challenge themselves, wow, okay, we're going to have to change or completely change some of the ways we do things, particularly with AI and automated decision making. I've got to make sure that at all times within the process, I am in charge of that decision making. No one else, I'm in charge.
Mm.
And that's where you empower yourself to do better and better, hence accelerating continuous improvement. And again, that's one of the things I first of all want to see within an organization is, and I always ask the question, what has been the biggest success story for you over the last 12 months? Right? Now, a number of people have mentioned to me going through COVID, one of the successes was, and they saw, was their ability to be able to allow people to work from home. So
Uh-huh.
use technology to be able to call in and so forth. But that in itself now has caused some rising, not tensions, but issues that are becoming more and more. And one of these issues is if you don't go into work and you're with your senior managers and your teammates, you're not getting that empowering process between people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is one of the key things that we actually do within our training is each of the facilitators empower what we know and we understand onto the candidate. So what we're explaining to all the candidates is you must be prepared to sit and talk, watch people's body language, listen to them, take that idea on. Oh, no, that's not for me. I can do it a better way or a different way. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we call people empowerment. The
Yeah.
problem we have in society today is this acceptance. We can all work from home and we don't need to have that banter and camaraderie between each of us, right? But
Mm-hmm.
people have lost the idea of what that banter and camaraderie is all about. That is all about fostering empowerment between yourselves and in continuous improvement.
Yeah. I agree. I miss that actually. And I remember someone once told me that we should be comfortable enough to be uncomfortable. And that word, Ian, fortitude, it really struck a chord because I think it's easy to, self assess when things look great. But it's a whole other story to face what's uncomfortable and actually do something about it.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, I think that's where real growth and accountability actually begins,
true,
right? And
exactly.
and given ACI Global's dedication to skill development, how do internal audits and self-assessments help verify and strengthen competence within teams? And what benefits do clients experience when this becomes part of their organizational rhythm?
Well, in some respects, it's quite simple because basically our ISO skills assessment process is built on this very factor. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So what we're doing, we're getting the person involved in doing the task. We're having them get a senior manager, or it could even be their fellow employee, taking a little video clip of not looking for fault, but they're taking a little video clip to demonstrate they're doing the process correctly, right? That then comes back and sits on their log as a log demonstrating their skills and capability and ultimately merit, right? Now, if you step back, in actual fact, that is an audit. That is a conformity assessment. You're reviewing someone doing a task, right? And the last part of that, when the person does the little video, I always employ them, make sure you actually view the video before you then pass that on to the candidate for them to log in their log, right? Because there are times when you're looking back at the video, you say, oh my goodness me, that's not right. Because you're focused in actually doing the videoing, right? And
Yeah.
this has even quite often happened to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a video clip of a person doing a task, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the background, there could be something that could quite clearly affect the process being undertaken, but has
Mm-hmm.
been missed not only by myself, but also the person that's fulfilling that task.
Yeah.
So you then sit down with the person, you play the little video clip, and you don't have to say anything. They actually pick it themselves. Wow, I didn't see that, right? And then the correction are made within that process. Hence, you get accelerating continuous improvement,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where this becomes so beneficial.
So true. Because it's one thing to have goals, it's another to know you've got the people with the skills to actually hit them. And I
Yes.
always love how ACI Global makes the competence measurable and meaningful. So, how about we look ahead, Ian? How should businesses evolve their approach to auditing and self assessment? And how do you continue to support organizations in embedding these practices into their culture for long term success?
Yeah, well, I think ACI Global is very well set up to do this because this has been the way we do things anyway.
Mhm.
And we have an extensive resource base at ACI Global, policies, procedures, manuals, and like I said, we have the inboarding and induction process, recognition of prior learning, current competence, and skills assessments, which is tied into the ISO skills assessment process. All these is targeted to people. All this is targeted to people, ensuring that their philosophy is accelerating their own improvement. Because again, if that is going like a rocket ship, right, the organisation is then going like a rocket ship.
Mhm.
And in summary, and again, we mentioned it previously. One of the reasons why this is oh so important now is, as forgive me from repeating myself, the world is a very troubled place, but we have this notion from the big platform owners and some of the high, and I'm not saying this in any demeaning way, high and very powerful people. They seem to think that they can foister upon small to medium-sized businesses, even some of the biggest businesses, right? But they don't take into account people are involved in these businesses.
Mhm.
People do not need to have this additional worry. Oh, in 3 or 4 years' time, I won't be here because my job won't be here. What we're saying is, if they partner with ACI Global, and there will be a number of links that we can have as a summary of this podcast, where people can click on that link and it will take them to the recognition of prior learning, the ISO skills assessment, and things like that, where they can see how this is actually done and how ACI Global and its extensive resource library and human resources we can also provide to them and their organisations to move forward.
Yes, and that really brings it home, Ian. Auditing is about progressing and again,
Yes,
fostering the people to drive more value to the organization. And you're building the kind of culture where excellence is expected.
yes,
So
yes,
thank you, Ian. What a rich discussion from performance clarity to culture shaping. This was about mindset. And in business, mindset is everything. So thank you, as always, for grounding us in substance and strategy. You've once again made us rethink not just our process, but our purpose in running them. Thank you.
yes. And thanks for yourself and also all the listeners. And
Mhm.
we look forward, Miles and I look forward to having you on board next week, where we'll actually talk about how you can actually form an audit team, and then
Okay.
you could actually take that internal mentoring between yourself and your audit team, and because the team is the oh so powerful tool for an organization, because then you strip away the silos completely.
Mhm. Team is a powerful tool to an organization.
Yes,
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. So today, Ian reminded us that how we measure ourselves says everything about where we're headed and who we want to become. So if you're ready to rethink your own audit and self assessment processes, check out the link below because their courses and resources are designed to make your people and your whole systems exceptional. After having several podcasts with Ian, I would say he's the rare kind of leader who believes in mentoring, not just managing. And that wraps up another episode of X Rays. Thank you for staying with us. Share this episode, and I'll see you in our next one. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Rays.